What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Nash here. Welcome back to the channel. Today's Thursday, so happy Thanksgiving to you guys. So today I actually have a deck profile for you guys. It's a deck you would least expect. It is none other than a Magna Warrior deck, and what's interesting about this one is that I've actually been working on this for well over like I want to say about like 7 months, I think, and I think I might have gotten it to where it's actually like playable. I'm not so sure if it would be competitive, but still. So here is the deck. I might not be able to show all of it. Wait, alright. That's the Magnet Warrior deck. So I'm gonna be showcasing you guys, showcasing the deck, and I'm gonna be posting it on my Instagram, so you guys can definitely follow me there. The link is down in the description. And if you guys are wondering why my hands are in my pocket, my hands are pretty dry. Literally, they're dry. But anyway, guys, so let's get straight into the deck profile. And before I do, if you guys are wondering why I'm doing this video a little early, it's actually it's because it is Thanksgiving and my family, well, the worst side of my family is going to be showing up a little later on, and yeah, it's not going to end so well for me. So yeah. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So first up, I'm actually running 2 copies of each of the original Magna Warriors. So I have 2 Beta, 2 Gamma, and 2 Alpha. And I'm also running the 1 copy of Valkyrion, the Magna Warrior. And the reason why I'm only running 1 copy is because I have 2 copies of the parts needed to summon Valkyrion, and you really don't want to go into Valkyrion all that much. You mainly want to use him for the fusion, which is Imperion Magnum, the superconductive battle bot, which I'll be explaining why I'm running that card in the extra deck later on in the video. Then I'm actually running 3 copies of Berserkion, the Electro Magna Warrior. The effect is actually similar to Valkyrion, but the effect actually says for Berserkion, it says, cannot be normal summon or set, must first be special summon from your hand by banishing 1 Alpha, the Electromagnetic Warrior, Beta, the Electromagnetic Warrior, can't speak, and Gamma, the Electromagnetic Warrior, from your hand, graveyard, and or face-up from your monster zone. You can banish 1 level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior from your graveyard, then target a card your opponent controls and destroy. So it's essentially a card that can easily break boards. If this card is destroyed by battle, or if this card is in its owner's possession destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can target 1 each of your banished cards, which is Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, the Electromagnetic Warrior, and special summon them. So it's kind of similar to Valkyrion, but it's a little different because with this one you're popping your opponent's cards, and it's kind of like a Doomsday Horror, if you will, but instead of the monsters being sent back into the graveyard, it's being the cards that are in the banish pile are summoned back to the field instead, which is actually not too shabby. It's actually not too bad of a card. Then I'm running 2 copies of Elemental Hero Prisma. This is an interesting card, but the reason being is because I have Elemental Hero Gaia in the extra deck, which I'll explain why. But it's basically a fusion. It's basically a polymerization with legs, if you will. Next up, I have 2 copies of Delta, the Magnet Warrior. This is a really interesting card, but if you guys don't know what this card does, it reads, if this card is normal or special summon, you can send a level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior monster from your deck to the graveyard. So it's essentially a Fool's Burial. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can manage 3 level 4 lower Magnet Warrior monsters from your graveyard. So it's like from your graveyard, except Delta the Magnet Warrior, and special summon 1 Valkyrion from your hand or deck in your oriented summoning condition. So it's essentially your base. So basically, it's basically the effects of Valkyrion, if you will, in its own weird ways, which is pretty cool. Now for the Electromagnetic Warriors, I'm actually running 3 copies of each, so 3 Alpha, 3 Beta, and 3 Gamma. So if you guys don't know about what Alpha does, Alpha says if this card is normal or special summon, you can add a level 8 Magna Warrior monster from your deck to your hand. So it's essentially a Rhoda. It's essentially a Rhoda with legs. You can only use this effect once per turn. During your opponent's turn, you contribute this card, special summon a level 4 Magna Warrior from your deck, which is a quick effect. So if your opponent, if your opponent's monster has, like, say, I'll say 1900 attack. Let's say that you contribute him, and then go into Gamma, summon Gamma in defense, which has 2000 defense, and you're essentially safe. You're essentially safe, which is pretty good. Now with Beta, hang on a second. There we go. Now Beta's effect says if this card is normal or special summon, you can add a level 4 Magna Warrior monster from your deck to your hand, except Beta, okay, so both of them have the same effect, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so definitely 3 copies of these, and what's cool is that each of these rock monsters are super poly targets. They are excellent super poly targets going into cards like Gaia, and even also I think it's just Gaia. Yeah, so it's just mostly like going to Gaia, which is really good. Next up, I have 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. It's Ash Blossom. You gotta run it. You run it in pretty much almost everything, literally. So nothing too special about that. Then I'm running the 1 copy of Morphine Jar. What's interesting about this one is that if you have no cards in your hand, you're essentially getting it's literally a +5. It's literally a +5. But if you have a card in your hand that is essentially a brick, which could potentially be which could potentially be like Prisma or even Berserkion, and you have Morphine Jar set, you can flip it face up and then just go straight into, so you can -1 +5, basically. And then last but not least, we have the 2 copies of Doki Doki. This is basically a special summon. So if you guys don't know about Doki Doki, Doki Doki's effect reads: you can discard 1 rock monster, special summon from your deck, a rock monster that has the same original attribute and level in face up or face down position. So if you have say Delta the Magnet Warrior, in your hand, you can activate Doki Doki's effect, discard Delta, which you could get off his effect, which is incredible, and then you can special summon Alpha, the Electromagnetic Warrior, activate his effect, get out Berserkion, and then if you have the parts needed to summon Berserkion, you banish them, summon Berserkion, and potentially attack for game, which actually is not that bad of a play. It's a pretty good card. I know that in the Adamantipator decks, I know that a lot of people were actually running 3 copies of it in those decks, but with this build, it's better off as a 2-of, just because it's not as consistent as you would think if it were to be at 3. But if it's at 2, it's a little bit better in my personal opinion. So now moving on to the spells. First up, we have a hero. The one copy of a hero lives. It's at 1, so it doesn't surprise me. But it's basically, but you can basically summon a one elemental hero monster from your deck, which is like a, I guess, a Rhoda, so to speak. It's somewhere along those lines. Next up, we have the one copy of Fusion Recovery. So if you summoned Gaia. So if you summon Gaia, you can add poly, you can add polymerization and one of the fusion materials that was used to summon it. So you could do fusion recovery and say Delta the Magnet Warrior, summon Delta, get out of its effect, you're good to go. Speaking of poly, I'm actually running 3 copies of it, but I'm actually running the original artwork from the original Duel Monsters anime. Honestly, I prefer this artwork better than the ones that were seen in GX. Honestly, that's just my personal opinion. Next up, we have the one copy of Monster Reborn. Then the one copy of Book of Moon. Book of Moon is used not for your opponent's monsters, but for your own. And what would that monster be? None other than Morphing Jar. You're using it for Morphing Jar. Flip it face down. Flip it back. Face up. Another +5 easy. Then the one copy of Called by the Grave. Yeah, this is an odd one. I don't know why they put Called by the Grave to 1, but it is what it is. Nothing too crazy there. And then for the field spells, I have the 2 copies of Magnetic Field. This is a cool card because its effect says if you control a level 4 or lower Earth Rock type monster, you can target a level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior in your grave and special summon it. You can only use this effect once per turn. So it's essentially a monster. So it's essentially a Monster Reborn. So if you have, say, Doki Doki in defense, you can summon. You can summon Alpha. You can summon one of your Magnet Warrior monsters, and so you can literally you can reborn your Magnet Warrior monsters and just go for game. Literally, go for your Xyz plays, your Link plays, and whatnot. Simple. And then its other effect says, once per turn at the end of the damage step, when an Earth Rock monster you control battles an opponent's monster, but the opponent's monster was not destroyed by battle, you can return that opponent's monster to the hand. So it's essentially a Monster Reborn and a compulsory evacuation device in spell form, basically. Excuse me. In field spell form, which is stupid. Which is utterly stupid. Next up, I have the one copy of Catapult Zone, which is basically a Foolish Burial for the Rock type monster, and then the one copy of Fusion Recycling Plant. It says once per turn you can discard a card, add a polymerization from your deck to your grave, but to your hand. Once per turn during the end phase, you can target a monster in your grave that was used as fusion material for a fusion summon this turn, add it to your hand. So it's essentially a double. It's essentially another version of fusion recovery, if you will. So it's really nothing too crazy there. And then for the trap cards I'm running, I have the 2 copies of Infinite Impermanence, which is I think the only other hand trap that I have in the main deck. And then the Solemn package. So I have 1 Strike, the 1 Judgment, and then the 1 Solemn Warning. So it's really nothing too crazy with the main deck. Would I say that it's competitive? It's kind of hard to say. It's still in the testing stages at this point. But if you guys have any ideas, definitely let me know in the comments below, because I'm very curious to see what you guys think about the deck. And speaking of decks, we have the extra deck here. So first up, I have the 2 copies of Imperion Magnum, the Superconductive Battle Bot, which obviously needs Valkyrion, the Magna Warrior, and Berserkion, the Electro Magna Warrior, which it says must be fusion summoned with the above fusion materials and cannot be special summoned by other ways. That right there is just insane. It's insane that they need exactly those 2 to summon it. But what's funny, but what's ironic is that if you, is that with Valkyrion you could just recycle it over and over again using cards like like its own effect and whatnot. So it's pretty interesting. Once per turn, during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a spell or trap card or monster effect, you can negate the activation and destroy it. And if you do, destroy it. So it's essentially like I guess kind of like a Solemn Judgment, but in monster form. If this face-up card and its owner's control leaves the field because of the opponent's card effect, you can special summon both Valkyrion and Berserkion from your hand or deck, ignoring their summoning conditions. So literally, this deck ensures that you're able to attack for game. It ensures that you attack for game, which is absolutely nuts. It's a Solemn Judgment, and it's basically I guess like a cyber emergency with legs, so to speak. So it's pretty cool. Next up, we have Elemental Hero Gaia, the one copy. Obviously, this card requires one Elemental Hero monster, which obviously you do, which obviously is Prisma, and an Earth monster, which is pretty much anything. Must be fusion summoned, cannot be summoned by other ways. When this card is fusion summoned, target a face-up monster your opponent controls until the end phase is attack. It is halved, and this card gains that same amount of attack. So because that its attack is 2200, if your opponent's monster has, like, say 2500 attack, has like say 5000 attack, it goes down to 2500, and Gaia's attack goes from 2200 to 4700, which is nuts. Nuts, I tell you, nuts. So it's kind of like a Elemental Hero the Shiny, but as an Earth attribute. So it's pretty cool. For the Xyz monsters, we have Gallic Granite, which is essentially a search, which you could literally road up for pretty much any rock monster you want, and you can even if you want, use it. You can cyber emergency, or no, you can cyber ref system one of your rock monsters in face, summon in defense position. It's just stupid. Then of course the one, Evil Hero, the Evil Swarm. Sorry, not Evil Hero. Evil Swarm Exoton Knight, which is essentially a Nibiru, so to speak. So it's pretty fun, pretty nuts, which is pretty fucking nuts. Then of course we have the one Dagosto Emerald, probably one of the weirdest cards you could run in a Magnet Warrior deck, but it's really, really good because you're shuffling 3 monsters from your grave back into the deck, and then you're drawing a card. So it's essentially like a Pot of Avarice, so to speak, but instead of drawing 2 cards, you're only drawing 1 card. And then of course its other effects, and then of course one of its other effects says target a non-effect monster in your grave and special summon it. So it's basically a monster reborn for the original Magnet Warriors, basically. Then the one Abyss Dweller, pretty much this works well going against hand traps, so it's really nothing too crazy there. Phantom Knight's a break sword. Basically, if he's destroyed the 2 monsters that were used to summon him, hang on a second, let me... Oh, never mind. Okay, never mind. Basically, you can... Okay, never mind. I thought it was... Okay. So Break Sword, I'm actually thinking about taking him out. Just because this card really doesn't work well with the Magnet Warriors, because you need to have the Phantom Knight monsters to trigger off its effect, where their levels would be increased by 1. But you're mainly using this card to destroy both your cards and your opponent's cards. So it's nothing really too crazy there. And then for the last of the Xyz, we have Gorgonic Guardian, which is an insane card. So if you guys don't know what Guardian does, it requires 2 level 3 rock monsters, so it's semi-generic. Once returned during any player's turn, you can detach a material from this card, target a face-up monster your opponent controls, its attack becomes 0, and if it does, its effects are negated. These effects last until the end of the turn. Once per turn, You can target a monster on the field with 0 attack and destroy it. So it's essentially it's essentially Slifer the Sky Dragon, where you could just completely decimate your opponent's monsters. Literally, this card could just run them over easy. For the Link monsters, we have Borosword. I'm not saying anything else about Borosword except Borosword. Next up, we have the one copy of Raster Liger. Raster Liger. This is a very unique card. A lot of people, and you guys are probably wondering, why would you want to run this card? Well, its effect says you can target one Link monster in either graveyard. This card gains attack equal to that target's attack until the end of the turn. Which, right there, if your Borosword is in the graveyard, Raster Liger's attack becomes 5,000. I ain't saying nothing else. You contribute any number of monsters this card points to, destroy an equal number of cards on the field. You can only use each effect once per turn. So what's cool about him is that if you have I think you can also tribute your opponent's cards, because that your opponent would have an arrow of it, an arrow of his own. You can basically just pop like 2 cards, which is really, really good. Next up, we have the one Nightmare Unicorn and the one Nightmare Phoenix. I'm not saying much about it; it's pretty self-explanatory. Then we have Oz of the Earth Charmer Immovable. Hang on, there we no. We have also the Earth Charmer Immovable, which obviously it requires 2 monsters. One of them has to be an Earth monster, and it's funny because it's always treated as a familiar possessed, which is nuts. It says here you can target 1 Earth monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your zone. This card points to. It's essentially a monster reborn. It's essentially a monster reborn for Earths. If this Link Summon card is destroyed by battle or is destroyed by an opponent's card effect while in its owner's monster zone, you can add an Earth monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. So it's again Rhoda. A lot of these cards have a Rhoda effect, so you can easily just go into cards like Gaia, and even also Imperion Magnum, so it's really, really good. And then the last of the extra deck cards, we actually have Mrs. Radiant. So if you guys don't know what he does, all Earth monsters on the field gain 500 attack and defense. So basically, it's literally just extra attack gain. Extra attack point gain. Nothing really too crazy there. All wind monsters on the field lose 400 attack and defense. So because that you're not running because that there are no wind monsters in the deck, you're good. You're good. If this card is destroyed by battle or a card effect, you target an Earth monster in your grave, add it to your hand. So again, another form of Rhoda, basically. So, or I guess this one, this would be like a returning warrior returning alive, where you can add a warrior back to your hand from your grave. So it's really, really cool. And now for the side deck. First up, I actually have the Red Eyes package, so I'm running the 1 copy of Dark Magician, the 1 Red Eyes, the 1 Dragoon, Verde Anaconda, and of course the Red Eyes Fusion. If you summon Verde Anaconda, you essentially just win. You essentially just win the duel, and you're done. It's done. GG no re, hands down. Then I'm running, and since this is a rock deck, I am running 2 copies of Nibiru the Primal Being. This card basically says, fuck you. Once you reveal this card, it basically says fuck you. Fuck you, fuck your board. I win, basically. Then the 1 copy of Elemental Hero Honest Neos. The reason being is because you want to use it for Gaia. So when you summon Gaia, you activate his effect. cut one of your opponent's monsters in half. Gaia gains that attack. Activate Neo's effect. Discard it. Gaia gains an additional 2,500, and you essentially just attack for game. So it's pretty busted. Then of course the World Child's Guard Dragon Almerduk, which is actually a super poly target of all things, which is pretty cool. So its effect says must first be either fusion summon or special summon from your extra deck by tributing the above cards you control, in which case you don't use poly. This card gains attack. This card can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. So because that its attack is 3,000, it's pretty much game. It's almost like game, basically. When an attack is declared involving this card and an opponent's link monster, you can banish one link monster with the same link rating as that monster from your field or grave and destroy that opponent's monster. And if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its original attack. So it's essentially like it basically has an effect similar to Chaos number 39 Utopia Ray V, where it can deal damage on its own, which is stupid. Then, of course, the 2 copies of Twin Twister, excellent back row removal, nothing too crazy there. 2 copies of Super Poly. So what's interesting about this is that I have 2 fusions in the in the side deck. One of them is a Red Eyes fusion target, but what you guys don't know is that Gaia is another excellent Super Poly target. So if you have Prisma on the field and your opponent is running has an Earth monster of their own, you can use Super Poly, fuse their Earth monster with your Prisma, Gaia is summoned to the field, so it's really good. And then last but not least, the 2 copies of Evenly Matched, another form of Nibiru, so to speak, so it's really good. But guys, that is going to do it for this deck profile. Again, let me know in the comments below your thoughts on the deck. I'm very curious about it. And that is gonna do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel, you guys want to see more deck profiles in the future, definitely hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content that comes your way. And be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. All the links are down in the description. And on that, this is your boy Nash signing out, and happy Thanksgiving, everybody.